Hey, folks. I want to try to build on um, something that has occurred to me throughout my um, relationship with, say, the history and philosophy of science, that sort of field of inquiry, and certainly philosophy of freedom fits um, quite well in that realm. But it occurs to me in reading the last full chapter, The Consequences of Monism, even clearer. And I'm going to try to articulate that clarity. I'm not sure that it's going to come out clear because it's there's some sort of newness to this um, thought organism, I guess, that's been building for these 30 years or so. Um, partly this is helped to be unlocked by Cryan Buell's excellent essay, if difficult to read in its construction and um, presumption of terms. It's worth fighting through to get to. Part of it is inspired by that, but and particularly as he takes empiricism to task. And but it occurs to me, and maybe this is something of what he's talking about with negative spiritual activity. It occurs to me that with empiricism, rationalism is a default mode of thinking. There's just no way around it. Um, but I want to fit that into this picture in The Consequences of Monism when he's talking about the subjective and the objective and percept and concept and perceptivity and conceptuality, say. um, if we have just this um, well, I guess first of all, I want to say that uh, natural science today is the predominant moral force in the world, and there's no way around that. It seems to me we're going to have to go through it, and so that's going to need to be transformed. And I believe this is the work that Steiner did here, particularly in the chapter on a moral imagination. But really, the nine through now, chapters 9 through now, through 15, really operationally um, illustrate the way through that. And it seems very clear to me, but obviously it's not clear to the follow the science crowd. Um, and I know there's perfectly good science being done in fields that are marginal to the public narrative, to the moralistic, uh, uh, to the ways in which nor, morality is being um, made normative through materialism. Say so. There's a lot at stake, in other words, and so this idea that empiricism is the intention of stripping all subjectivity from the scientific process leaves one with percepts without concepts, at least reliable concepts. So the agency that would provide the reliability of conceptual frameworks is lost. And so, so what that results in is, on the other side of that equation, is that operationally it results in um, the need to provide for models and for external, let's say, the need to provide for elaborate models and technologies that will replace the cognitive processes in order to complement the perceptual observations, say. Um, and of course, the problem with this is it abstracts us from the um, the agency to know, and so what that results in is a default subjectivity, absolute subjectivity, because we have no relationship with the phenomena of our soul spiritual organization as it's a participant in the world. So it's a departicipating sort of decapitation, uh, is a way to put it. On one hand, well, and on the other hand, because we have these. The other pole of this is the conceptual world. And because we are developing models and instruments that take us farther and farther from the life spheres, we're actually cutting ourselves off from perception. So we have concepts and conceptual frameworks that manufacture perception, that manufacture percepts um, that aren't that are a simulation, say. This is even before metaphysical realism. It's just that point at which operationally this is just the way it falls out. Um, Models and instruments as abstracting further and further away from the spheres of life as that which we perceive. It's really ironic and self-contradictory, of course. Um, and I guess the example of this, and could be thought of as a controversial example, but I think for me it's at least plausible, but seems concrete, and that is that we are studying a cell cultures by killing them through um, through various versions of poison and starvation of the life within that culture, which I guess could be seen as a microcosm of the uh, globalization of empiricism as a kind of religiosity. That's an aside editorial, um, but we do that, and then we use um, in silico techniques and technologies to derive um, uh, to derive uh, a whole perceptual field overlaid on the actual observation potentially taken up through real cellular biology. And it's not, it's understandable when we're dealing with um, uh, knowing life at that microcellular level, and um, even with the presumption let's be generous with the presumption is going to yield something different than it would at more easily observable levels. Um, the fact that we um, okay, so again, staying with the generous nature of things, or the generous posture here, uh, it is it is if it weren't that there were biologists who did look at um, live cell cultures and come to completely different conclusions about what the basis for any of the research would be, and the ways in which one would the conclusions one would draw, let alone the pharmaceutical technologies developed as in response, say. Uh, so I just want to provide that's an example where you have uh, a technologically produced simulation of biology that's uh, used as the reality, and um, then we have a whole public policy that was developed associated with that, while uh, it may not be based on, it seems unlikely that it's based on any reality that has to do with any kind of biological understanding at all. That's fucking bizarre. If 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 I've done my proper distinctions and uh, uh, my concepts are precise enough here. I'd love to know what people think about that.